Can a DUI lawyer save your license in Pennsylvania? One traffic stop, one night in a holding cell. And now the question running through your head isn't just what happens in court, it's how am I getting to work on Monday? Because in central Pennsylvania, losing your license isn't an inconvenience, it's a crisis. Getting from York County to Harrisburg, managing a commute from Carlisle, picking up your kids, getting to treatment, none of that works without a car. So the question I get asked constantly is, can a DUI lawyer actually save my license? The honest answer is sometimes yes. And even when the suspension can't be avoided entirely, there's usually more that can be done than most people realize. I'm Sean Quinlan, Pennsylvania DUI attorney based in Camp Hill. Let's talk about how license protection actually works. How Pennsylvania DUI suspensions actually work. Before we talk about what can be done, you need to understand something that surprises a lot of people. Your license is not automatically lost the moment you get charged with a DUI. In many cases, the real suspension trigger comes later, after a conviction, after ARD placement, or from a separate refusal-related suspension through PennDOT. That distinction matters because it creates room to fight, plan, and avoid mistakes that lock in the worst outcome. Pennsylvania DUI law uses different penalty tiers, and license consequences don't all look the same across those tiers. Your suspension risk depends on your BAC level or whether drugs were involved, your prior DUI history, whether you refused chemical testing, how the criminal case ultimately resolves. And here's the part that trips people up constantly. The criminal court side and the PennDOT license side are two separate processes. A court appearance in Cumberland County, or Dauphin County, or York County doesn't automatically fix the PennDOT issue. You can be making progress in court while the suspension is building on a completely separate track because nobody addressed the licensing problem directly. What saving your license actually means. When I say a lawyer can help protect your license, I want to be clear about what that means in practice, because it's not always one thing. Sometimes it means avoiding a suspension entirely. Sometimes it means preventing a refusal suspension from sticking. Sometimes it means getting the case into ARD so the license fallout is smaller than it would have been with the conviction. And sometimes it means getting you into an ignition interlock or restricted license option quickly so you can still go to work, school, treatment, or court while the case is pending. Think of it like fixing a leak. The best result is stopping the water before it spreads. The second best result is containing the damage fast. Both matter, and both are worth fighting for. What I want you to take away from this video is simple. There's usually more room to protect your driving privilege than people assume when they're sitting in a parking lot trying to process what just happened. When suspensions hit and when they don't. Let's get specific about when a license suspension is triggered in Pennsylvania, because not every DUI case works the same way. First offense, general impairment. This is a BAC between a .08 and a .10. A first offense general impairment case may actually avoid license suspension entirely. That surprises a lot of people, but it's true. A first offense DUI is not automatically a license loss situation. Higher BAC or highest rate tier. Once you move into high rate or highest rate territory, mandatory suspension periods typically apply. A 12-month suspension is commonly at these tiers, even for a first offense. Drug DUI. Prescription medication, marijuana, or controlled substances. Drug DUI cases are usually treated at the highest tier, which means license consequences match that level. Repeat offenses. Second and third DUIs bring longer suspensions, less flexibility, and far less room for a favorable outcome. Once prior offenses enter the picture, the mandatory minimums start controlling the conversation. Refusal. This is one of the biggest pressure points in any DUI case. Pennsylvania's implied consent law means that if you refuse a lawfully requested breath or blood test after a DUI arrest, PennDOT can suspend your license separately from the criminal case, even if the court case is still pending. A refusal suspension runs on its own timeline and can hit hard and fast. If you refuse testing, treat the license issue as urgent from day one. The main ways a lawyer tries to protect your license. Here's what legal work on the license side actually looks like. Challenging the stop, arrest, and testing. Police need a legal reason to pull you over. The arrest and testing process has rules too. A lawyer reviews dashcam footage, police reports, field sobriety testing records, chemical test documentation, and timing. If evidence was gathered in a way that violated your rights, a lawyer can seek suppression, asking the court to exclude that evidence. If key evidence gets suppressed, the case weakens, and a weaker case often changes the license outcome too. Working toward an outcome that doesn't trigger suspension. Not every resolution carries the same PennDOT consequence. A reduction, a dismissal, or a resolution that avoids suspension triggering offense can keep your license intact, or at least in better shape than a straight conviction would. Even when a complete win isn't realistic, a better outcome can mean less time off the road. That's not a small detail. In a lot of cases, that's the whole fight. Using ARD for first-time offenders. ARD, Accelerated Rehabilitative Disposition, is Pennsylvania's pretrial diversion program for eligible first-time offenders. It can help you avoid a criminal conviction, and for license purposes, it can also produce a better result than a straight guilty plea. ARD isn't automatic. Eligibility depends on the facts, the county, and your history, and timing matters. Waiting too long can hurt your shot at ARD. If it's on the table, early action makes a real difference. What if the suspension can't be avoided? Sometimes the suspension can't be stopped entirely, but that doesn't mean you're stuck without options. The Ignition Interlock Limited License. An Ignition Interlock Limited License allows you to drive a vehicle equipped with a breath testing device. Before the car starts, you blow into it. If alcohol is detected, the car won't start. This option can allow you to keep driving during or after certain DUI suspensions, depending on your situation. Timing, eligibility, and paperwork all have to be handled correctly. A small filing mistake can mean extra weeks without legal driving. Occupational Limited License. An OLL can allow restricted driving for approved purposes in some suspension situations. But DUI-related cases have special rules, and not every suspended driver qualifies. The problem isn't just knowing these options exist. The problem is knowing which one fits your specific case and when you can actually apply. The wrong option is like showing up with the wrong keys. You still end up standing outside. Full restoration at the end of a suspension. When the suspension period ends, full restoration usually requires more than just waiting out the calendar. You may need to pay a restoration fee, complete required classes, or treatment, satisfy Ignition Interlock requirements, and confirm with PennDOT that every step is done. Missing one item delays everything. That's frustrating, and it happens constantly. CDL holders and licensed professionals. If your livelihood depends on driving or a professional license, the stakes here are higher than they are for most other people, and the strategy has to reflect that. CDL holders face especially harsh consequences. Commercial driving privileges can be threatened by a single DUI, even if the arrest happens in your personal vehicle. Your ability to earn a living can be at risk long before the criminal case is resolved. Licensed professionals, nurses, teachers, healthcare workers, contractors, face a different layer of exposure. A DUI can trigger employer reporting obligations, licensing board scrutiny, and background check problems that follow you long after the court case is closed. If your income depends on your license or your professional credentials, protecting those isn't an afterthought in the legal strategy. It's a main issue from day one. Mistakes that make the suspension worse. Some license damage comes from the charge itself, but a significant amount comes from what happens after. Avoidable mistakes that create new problems. Missing PennDOT notices or deadlines. PennDOT mail is not junk mail. Suspension notices, restoration letters, and eligibility notices need immediate attention. If a deadline passes, some options disappear permanently. Leaving a notice on the kitchen counter for a week can cost you more than you'd expect. Driving while suspended. Driving on a DUI-related suspension in Pennsylvania can add more suspension time, new fines, criminal charges, and in some situations, mandatory jail exposure. It is one of the worst decisions you can make. If you're not certain of your license status, find out before you drive. Don't guess. Assuming the court and PennDOT are the same process. Progress in court does not automatically fix PennDOT. These are two separate tracks. You can have a great court outcome and still be heading toward a suspension because the licensing side was never addressed directly. A lawyer who only thinks about the courtroom and ignores PennDOT is leaving half the problem unsolved. A DUI charge in Pennsylvania puts your license, your record, and your daily life at risk all at the same time. But the license side, the part that determines whether you can get to work on Monday, often has more options than people realize when they're first processing what happened. Early action matters here more than almost anything else. The sooner the license issue gets attention, the more options stay on the table. Start right now. Gather every document tied to your arrest, your court dates, and any PennDOT mail you've received. Put every deadline in one place, and if your license is already suspended, stop driving until you know exactly what your legal status is. If you've been charged with a DUI in Pennsylvania and want to understand what can be done to protect your license, reach out. Free consultation, no pressure. Link is in the description. Subscribe for more straight talk on Pennsylvania DUI law. See you in the next video.